This first one is something I've talked about over the last few shows. I'm not really sure. Yes, do you think they're really going into next season with Ersson and Fedotov as the goalie tandem? And I've said I would like to see them get a third goalie, especially the way they managed the roster this year. You just look at there's just a lot of space being taken up, whether it's Cam Atkinson, whether it's Nick Delorier not playing a ton, whether it's they like having a seventh defenseman around, whether to play him or just kind of be a veteran, break glass in case of emergency kind of guy. I gotta believe you can find these dudes on waivers. You can call them up from the AHL. Like, yeah, having a veteran like Eric Johnson or Mark Stahl around, I guess, is nice. Also, remember, like, Victor Mete and Louis Belpedio, they were totally fine in that role. Like, if they're going to be the sixth or seventh defenseman, just have them go back and forth between Lehigh Valley. I'd rather carry a third goalie, a veteran goalie who, say one guy goes down, you're not totally depending on Ersson or Fedotov for a couple weeks at a time the way they did after the Carter Hart situation unfolded. It was just like, yeah, well, Peterson and Sandstrom both stink, so we're going to start Ersson every single game. And that ultimately led to what we saw out of Ersson down the stretch, where he was just totally gassed. I would like to see them add a third goalie, even if it's a dude who doesn't play all that much, a veteran who doesn't need 30 starts, something like that. That said, man, they are paying Fedotov a pretty considerable amount of money. Now, they're not paying Ersson really anything. His contract extension, Danny Briere signed him to at the beginning of last season, kicks in this year. It's well under $2 million. But Fedotov getting over $3 million, how much money do you want tied up in the goaltending? The Flyers have less cap space than you think. We'll see how they handle the Cam Atkinson situation. Is it going to be a buyout where you extend his cap hit a little bit into next season just to move on and give him a chance to be a free agent and continue his career elsewhere? Are you able to maybe cover 50% of his salary, maybe use a mid to late round draft pick to offer to a middle team, play a middleman, kind of like the Flyers did in the Hannafin trade, where that team then covers like another 25%. So the team that ultimately acquires Cam Atkinson only gets him at like a quarter of the cost. Maybe then he'd be attractive to some teams. But there's a lot of cap maneuvering that's going to need to go on, perhaps if they're going to bring in someone else as well, whether it's another star, hopefully to play with Michkov, whether it's just a center, someone who can run the power play, a defenseman, whatever it might be. I just don't know if they want to allocate that kind of cap space to a third goalie if they're going to make other moves, corresponding moves this offseason. Now, if there are subtractions, like I think there might be, you look at Ristolainen, you look at Scott Lawton, well, there's $8 million, more than $8 million between those guys. All of a sudden, you're talking about a little bit more wiggle room where you could add a third goalie. But my gut right now is they're going to go with these two. Maybe that changes. We'll see perhaps in training camp, preseason, you just watch them and go, ooh, we can't do this. We can't go with just these two guys. Maybe there's a trade. Maybe they scour the waiver wire for a veteran goalie that another team just doesn't feel the need to carry. Maybe they're hoping to sneak somebody through waivers. Flyers jump there. But as much as I thought I wanted them to go out and get a third goaltender, I think it's going to be these two guys. It might not be the smartest idea. You just have no idea what Ivan Fedotov is. But you didn't go through all this with him, and you didn't pay him all that money not to find out what he is. So perhaps they're going to do that. And I appreciate all the love, the Bill Solo stuff in the comments. I appreciate it. I do think it's going to be Ersson and Fedotov. Do they finish the season with those two? That's a different question. It's unlikely. I mean, it's the goaltending position. Any tweak can cost a guy a couple of weeks, and it's the Flyers. Let us not forget, this is the Flyers we're talking about. Shit goes wrong, especially with goaltenders. So I would assume we see another goalie, but Maybe it's, Cal Peterson. We're just going to give that another try. Hey, man, he's under contract. He's making like $5 million. We're going to give it a shot. That's what it is next year if somebody gets hurt. But I'm starting to think less and less it's going to be a third goalie.
We all silly like the mayor.